Welcome back to KneeToKnee. I'm your host, Mark Merritt. Today's conversation is one I really didn't expect, but I'm really happy that I had. My guest today is Randy Bishop. He spent 20 years in ministry. He's a singer-songwriter. He's been through divorce, rebuilt, and then sat down at the dinner table at 4 o'clock in the morning on Easter Sunday and took his own life apart to figure out what was actually working. What came out of that was something that he calls the method. Reflect, reframe, rebuild. It's not a book he read. It's what he figured out when the noise finally stopped. We also get into what we call inherited beliefs, the stuff you've been doing your whole life because somebody before you did it without ever asking why. That's one that hits close to me, and we talk about that in the episode. And remember, if this episode connects with you, subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And if you know someone who's running on borrowed beliefs, send this one their way. All right, let's get knee to knee with Randy. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Knee to Knee. I'm so excited. As always, I'm excited to be here. We enjoy doing the podcast and having you out here with us. We actually have, I could really brag it up, but I'm just going to say we got Randy Bishop with us. He's got so many cool things about him that I'm really happy to have you here, Randy. So thank you for joining us today.
Mark, no, thank you very much for having me. A lot of cool things. I don't know about that, but I'm glad to be here.
I'm hoping we can dive in a little bit deeper and really get into some things. So in the introduction, we spoke a little bit about the method. I'm really curious about what the method is, because I don't think any of my listeners will know what that is. Could you kind of walk us through that first of all?
Yeah, sure. In a nutshell, I'll just explain it.
I promise we're gonna get into some maybe embarrassing stuff.
I hope so. I hope not. But listen, over a year ago, I woke up on an Easter Sunday and was really just struggling with where I was in life. And I sat down and just started to tear apart life is really what I did, Mark. And so what I did was I decided to look backwards. I decided to see what worked and what didn't work. I decided to figure out how to reframe it for my life and how to start rebuilding from there. And so really the method came from that. I just started to write down my process. It's very simple, but it was my process. I didn't dig into 1,000-page self-help books. I just kind of did it myself. I decided that what the method is reflecting on your past, reframing the truths, the lessons, the belief systems, whatever you have it, and then saying what works, what doesn't work for me, and then just rebuilding life and putting everything in alignment. Really, we hear that term a lot nowadays, and I never really understood it really until last year. Is that idea that I really needed to align what I was believing with what I was doing and how I was living. So that's really the basis of the method. And the fourth step, which I don't talk about a lot, is rebuild. Not rebuild, but repeat. Just go back and do it again, because I don't think you can do it all at one time. I think you do it in little pieces. And so that's been my process even through the year, is just continue to go back and find one more thing that I can reflect on and then reframe and then rebuild into my life.
Awesome. Well, and that's the journey to get to that the method. Can you kind of help us outline a little bit of that journey that got you there, that really kind of dives you into that thinking?
Well, I spent a long time in a lot of different things, as you mentioned. Spent 20 years in ministry. I've been a singer-songwriter. I've just done a lot of things. And the ministry part, I had to have that life together, perfect look. You're going to be dealing with people, and people want you to have things together. Well, things weren't together. And then I went through a divorce and another marriage, and on the other side of that one now. And I just realized that life didn't really add up to everything that I'd heard and thought and believed that it was going to add up to be. And so by the time I got to that dinner table, 4 o'clock in the morning on Easter in 2025, I really didn't put all the parts together to say, this doesn't work. My life hasn't worked. And I've been miserable. I've been unhappy. I've been giving and giving and giving and pouring and pouring and pouring into places that I never got anything back. And I need to really decide who I am and how I'm going to live the rest of my life. So that's kind of how it all came about.
Okay. You know, before we actually started recording, Randy and I were having a really good conversation, and it ties back into, it reminded me of our episode with Jesse Munns a few months ago. But Randy and I were talking about how, you know, Randy, you're the individual that would, you know, you're suit and tied, you're looking good, you're doing all that you need to do, but you're having some internal struggles. So how do you rectify that piece, right? I mean, that's a struggle that I think a lot of men go through.
Absolutely. No, in our conversation, we were talking about, I have a friend who's written his 10th book now, and he's just wearing his heart on his sleeve. He's just telling everything about his life. He's a former minister like I am. He's been an addict and he's rebuilt, and now he deals with addicts and helps recovery. I mean, he's an amazing guy. But I don't look like him, and he doesn't look like me. And I don't tell my story the way he tells his story because he'll just shake it out. He'll just say, this is the truth. This is the reality. And I realized that for a lot of times I would wear my heart at least down to here, but I wouldn't wear it all the way down the sleeve. I've always thought, everybody knows me, right? Everybody knows me. Yeah, if you spend any time, you know Randy. But at the end of the day, no, I didn't really let people in. I didn't really let anybody into the stuff that was really struggling with. And I think that most guys that I talk to, they're in the same boat. It's hard to be honest and it's hard to be vulnerable. It's not an easy thing. We're not really taught to do that. We're taught to buck up and be a man
Right.
and everything. But I think there's a lot of freedom and of course healing too, Mark. Just in saying, hey, this is my ill, this is my struggle, this is my problem, and I gotta do something.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right there. I mean, we have to reach that point, and I think that's the kind of the premise of KneeToKnee is being able to give a good place for men to have conversation. And then there's a lot of men's groups out there that are really amazing men's groups that I would encourage someone that if they're having any kind of struggle like that. I actually went to my very first men's group meeting a couple weeks ago when I wasn't traveling, and it was like, okay, all right, well, I'm gonna have to go back to this. It was really interesting to be able to be in that setting and to be able to then be around other men and have that kind of level of conversation without the judgment, without everything that goes with it, with that we think is going to come to us if we open up.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of good men's group, but I'm going to be honest, there's a lot of not very good men's group. I mean, I've been a part of some things
Yes.
where
Yeah.
yeah, I'm like, I don't relate to anything anybody's talking about. Everybody here wants to talk about their favorite sports team, but I'm struggling inside and I hurt and I don't care about football. I mean, that's just how I felt sometimes. I remember once when we were in ministry, I was always the music guy. And I remember being in a church once and we honored the mothers on Mother's Day and we gave them roses and we gave them chocolates and we poured all over about how wonderful and important these moms were. And then we got to Father's Day and we had men stand up and say, okay, who has the most cars? And then we gave one prize to a guy who had the most cars. And I'm just sitting there going, why did we lift up a mom? Why did we lift up the women? And we just kind of just brushed off the men. I didn't understand that. I thought this is kind of unequal. We should be letting everybody know that everyone's important and you all come here and you have some standing to be honest and be real people. I think that follows through in some men's group where we'll talk about the sports, we'll talk about the chrome on our motorcycles, and we won't talk about the heart issues or we won't talk about the struggles in our marriages. And it's a hard thing to do, especially for a man.
It is. It is. The one that I went to is out here in Utah, and was actually started, and the men's group is called "I Love You, Bro," which I think is a great name. And it actually came from a guy who there was somebody on an overpass in Utah that was thinking of throwing himself off an overpass. He was going to kill himself, and and there were people that were around from what I understand, and I'd read the article about it, and I'll put the article in the notes for everybody because it's interesting. But and he And people were like, okay, well, we think of your kids, you're trying to do all that. But this one guy, this one big Polynesian dude walks up to this guy and he just says, I love you, bro. And he kept saying it over and over to this guy. And now they're good friends and they're close. And so they've expanded this whole idea of it's not about, like you say, about football, and it's not about this and that. It's about actually being able to sit down and have that level of conversation with each other and support each other. And so I think that's the kind of group that I would encourage our listeners to search for, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Something that's honest, something that, hey, we should have fun. We should enjoy each other. We should enjoy being guys. We should enjoy the things we enjoy. But we should be able to find a space that's safe that says, you know what, I can honestly be sharing and express what I'm struggling with. Absolutely.
And you're exactly right there. And so now I'm going to jump over to my friend. I'm going to jump over to when we were chatting the other day. I know that
Yeah.
I knew that you had done music, but then all of a sudden I find out that you have music that's on Spotify and Amazon and Apple and so I actually asked Randy, I'm like, okay, I'm going to go look. And so Randy gave me a couple of songs. I'm going to put links down here, Randy. We're going to push this out here. We're going to see
I
what
am
we can do.
scared. I'm
But
scared what you're going to say now.
That was the one song that you said your mom laughed about.
My goodness.
And that particular song I listened to, and I laughed. I sat there and thought, because not too long ago, my wife went on a trip over, international trip, and she was gone for 2.5 weeks. And now I didn't do what you did in the song, but you do get to where you're really missing, right? And so in the song, what's the title of the song? Don't make me look it up.
Man, you're going to make me say it on here. Okay, the title of the song is I Love You, Love Me, Looking Like You. I love you, love me, looking like you. There you go.
So I'm going to encourage everyone. It's just a fun song. It's basically the first few days while your spouse is gone. It's great. But after that, and Randy's song.
You go a little crazy.
He did not do what he did what he said in the song. At least that's what he says. So we're going to leave it at that. But,
Thanks.
But it's kind of a fun song. And there's a couple others. I did like your song Dodge the Bullet and The Best Part of Texas as well. So I enjoyed those. I went through and listened to them and so a lot of fun stuff. I love bumping into people like that. So, and I did throw that out there just for fun, right in the middle of our conversation. So,
yeah.
So, tell me, I'm really curious about, you talk a lot about, we're going to jump back a little bit into after our comic relief there in the middle and have some fun laugh. Tell me a little bit about the beliefs that we never chose the patterns, and we never questioned, walk me through one that you carried for a long time that turned out not to be yours.
Well, there's so many of those things. And I think that we get into these habits, then habits are passed down, or beliefs or just the way we live are passed down from our families, one thing after another. The easiest way, let me try that again. I'm so messed up after that whole song talk. I apologize. The easiest way to consider.
Just a comic relief for fun in the middle.
Good. Goodness gracious. I shouldn't have told you about that song. Anyway. The easiest way to I'm gonna get this right. The easiest way to think about this is, in my first marriage, we had to have dinner at 6:00, and 6:00 didn't really work. Okay, I mean, you get off, you go through traffic, you get home. It's now 6:45, and you're rushing around to have dinner at 6:00, and it's just stressful. And I remembered going, why are we eating at 6:00? We're rushing through the door. Why are we doing this? Well, because mom and dad did it. Okay. Well, that was your mom and dad, and I understand, but why did they eat at 6:00? Well, because grandma and grandpa did it. Okay, but why are we eating at the time that works for grandma and grandpa? Why are we eating at the time that mom and dad eats? I mean, I'd like to come through the door and not rush for 15 minutes to try to put something on the table. I mean, look, maybe we could make it 6:30.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, all of a sudden the idea is I've been doing something that I didn't agree to. We've been doing stuff that we don't agree to. We just did it because somebody said to. And that's the easiest way to really get into this. When you start to understand, wow, I can shift that from 6 o'clock to 6:30, all of a sudden you're breathing a little bit. All of a sudden your life is changing a little bit. All of a sudden you're able to be more authentically you. And I know that's a silly little idea, but I think that's a poignant idea is how many things did mom and dad tell us to do? Did grandma and grandpa tell us to do? And we haven't analyzed it. We haven't thought through it. We've continued to do it a certain way. What if it was really, really not a good thing? And the dinner one is just the easy one to think about. But then I realized that
Yeah.
there were things at church, there were things, you know, in my spiritual life, there were things in marriage, there were things in parenting that I went, I don't know that I have to agree with those things. I don't know that I have to do it that way. And that becomes a life-changing moment to decide that you can change your mind from something that you just accepted. That's a big thing.
Yeah. It makes me think of a story that kind of goes around our church years ago I heard about where it was like a lady, and I don't know if this is real, right? But the same kind of concept where this wife, she cuts the ends off the roast.
Mhm,
And after so long, the husband says, "Why do you do that?" "Well, that's sort of the way my mother did it." And
mhm.
then calls mom, same kind of thing. And then they got a hold of grandma. Well, because her pan was too short.
Exactly. Exa
It all
Yeah,
started because the pan wasn't big enough.
and everybody since then has had a big enough pan, but they still chop it, and it doesn't make sense.
They they
Absolutely.
they cut the ends off.
Yeah,
Yeah, it just didn't make
yeah.
sense. So I think
Mhm.
I think you're right. We do tend to, whether it's tradition or whether it's just things around us. That's just what happens. And if we don't stop and ask ourselves why are we doing this? Why or that? We're not stepping back and analyzing that. I think we find ourselves in that, either still rushing to eat at 6 or just cutting the ends off the roast.
Exactly.
One way or the other, there's nothing that stops us from stopping and analyzing and making a new choice.
Mhm. Absolutely. I know that
Yeah.
one of the things when we talk about church, talk about spirituality, Christianity, for me,
Mhm.
I grew up in a certain tradition, but there's a lot of different traditions. There's a lot of different denominations. There's a lot of different ways people see
Mhm.
God, experience God, worship God. And
Right.
it's hard to say, I want to, the fact that somebody thinks or operates different than me. I am now going to a church that is nowhere near anything I grew up with or was ordained and served in, just because I met somebody who challenged me and I said, I'd like to
Right.
experience this differently than I've ever experienced it. And so I go, and you know what? I go into this church service and it's a lot more liturgical. It's a lot more structured than the services that I was a part of in ministry for years. But
Uh-huh.
I weep. I am touched in ways that I don't remember being touched in some services. And I realized that opening myself up to just because I did it a certain way doesn't mean it's the only and right way. That's really been probably in this last 6 months, one of my biggest journeys is just realizing that I'd said a lot of great words, church unity and hey, we extend our hands to everyone who's a Christian. And you say a lot of the right things, but this was putting some feet to I'm not going to the kind of place that I used to. I don't have to do that. I can walk into somewhere
Right.
different. I can experience something new. And it has been an experience. I mean, it's been a good one.
Good. Yeah, I think it's so important that everyone, whether no matter what denomination or whatever religious thing that you do, that you be able to make that connection
Hmm.
with, with whatever you call this, the God or supreme being or whatever it is,
Right.
to be able to
Right.
have that. And I think if you really find that connection, then it makes it easier to make those connections with those other congregants that you're in church with, that you're associating with. because you're all focused in that same direction. You see each other in a different light.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's just that same thing that we were talking about, how men have problem being vulnerable. Men have problem opening up. I mean, it's the same thing across denominations or any kind of spiritual discipline. Have a conversation with somebody. Let somebody know that
Right.
you're able to talk about things. Let somebody know that you're open, you're searching. You may believe that you have an answer, and they may need one, or they might have an answer that you've been looking for. Again, that little bit
Right.
of vulnerability is really important, because I've said this so many times. At the end of my life, I don't want to look back at all the stuff I've collected. I want to look back at all the people I've affected. That's what I want to do.
Nice. I like that.
And I
Yeah.
don't have I have a couple really nice guitars. But I mean, I'm not worried about the collection of things. am really looking forward to, how do I affect people? That's been my focus. And I think I used to think that when I was in ministry, but I think now I think it much more directly, much more, what is that? How does that work? Can I get my eyes off of me and
Yeah.
my stuff long enough that I can share something enough with somebody that it helps them? It's my focus.
Yeah, thank you. I love that. I've never heard it said that way before, so I sure appreciate you sharing that with us.
I coined it on another
So
podcast
we're
a few weeks.
okay, all right. Well then
Yeah,
great job. Great
it's
job.
my thing. Yeah,
And so it's your thing. It's you own that one, man. That's great.
I do.
But I'm going to be honest with you, I might use it from time to time because I love
Go
that.
right ahead. I'd go
But
right
I'll make
ahead.
sure that I give credit back. We're going to cite you, right? We're just going
Thank
to
you.
say,
Yeah,
back when Randy and I talked. Yeah, yeah.
that's okay. That's good.
So we're getting close to where we're going to wrap up. So I'm going to ask you the same question I ask all of our guests. What is one thing that our listeners can do today to build deeper connections with those around them?
Well, I thought about this ever since I read that, and to me, I would say to anybody, just because I have to fold it back to the re method, you have to know yourself. If you're going to connect, you have to know who you are. And you have to know, maybe not everything, but enough to be able to be open a little bit and really share. Because if not, what kind of connection do we have? And have a little bit of vulnerability. Go through a process where you can identify some stuff and be able to share it. Again, it gets back to that collection and affection thing, right? How can I affect
Right,
people rather than just collect things? If you want to connect, know yourself better, know what you need. I think that's a really important thing too, because connection's going to be bi-directional, in me sharing what you
right.
need and you sharing what I need.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's where the need and need comes from, right? I mean, it's not just one person, it's two people having that sharing that vulnerability and conversation together. So, well, Randy, thank you so much for joining us today and spending a few
You're welcome.
minutes on I don't know what it's like where you're at, but where I'm at, it's a rainy morning. Hopefully you've got a good beautiful day there.
I It's 69 and it's sunny this afternoon. So I usually walk 3 to
Okay.
6 miles a day. So I'll be taking off here after the podcast and probably putting on my walking shoes.
There you go. Well, I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. And everyone, thank you for joining us. And if you haven't subscribed, please jump over and do that. We are pushing for our next goal. And I've just sent a social media post out for that. So anybody that you haven't subscribed yet, please do. It helps us a ton to get this message out to as many people as we can. So thank you again. And thanks for joining KneeToKnee. And we'll catch you on the next go around.